Now we're good.
Are you on?
We're good.
We'll try that again. Welcome, everybody, to the State Forestry Health meeting here tonight. They have the BLM here and the U.S. Forest Service. And thank you again for your patience. House, they went till 1:30 last night. They're in session. We're still in session up at the Senate, so we don't have our joint ag committee members here. But it's good to see that we have a good crowd here anyway without the committee members. It's an annual event here. A lot of you that haven't been here before maybe don't know, but it's a very worthy education on what's going on with our state forestry. And my name is Bob Ide. I'm the chair of the Senate Ag, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, kind of a long government handle there. And I've really enjoyed working with Kelly Norris here. And with that, I will turn it over to Kelly to make introductions. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Ide. All right, we're going to do introductions first and just introduce all the panelists up here, and then we'll kind of get it kicked off. So welcome, everyone. My name is Kelly Norris. I'm the Wyoming State Forester. Good evening. Oh, you got to.
Good evening, Allison Richards, Acting Deputy Regional Forester, today representing the Rocky Mountain Regional Office as well as the Intermountain Region.
Hello, everyone. My name's Heidi Rogers, and I'm the BLM Wyoming State Forestry Lead.
All right. So thank you for hosting Ag, State, and Public Lands Water Resource Committee, the Forest Health Briefing. And really, like I said, we have Allie Richards here and we have Heidi Rogers. So we have both BLM and U.S. Forest Service. We're going to have one presenter each from State Forestry, Forest Service, and BLM with us. And then once we get through these presentations, we'll open it up for questions. We've provided handouts. The handouts are on both sides as you walked in. We have the 2025 annual report, along with informational handouts on Wyoming's Good Neighbor Authority program, an updated shared stewardship agreement with the U.S. Forest Service, along with additional information on the wildfire summary in the last biennium and some forest health project summaries. So we're going to begin. All right, so forest health surveying and monitoring is a collaborative effort between Wyoming State Forestry, federal agencies, conservation districts, and local communities. In 2025, approximately 9.2 million acres of forested lands were surveyed for forest health threats by Wyoming State Forestry and the U.S. Forest Service. This is about half of what was completed in 2024. Due to the U.S. Forest Service staffing, the Shoshone and Medicine Bow Route National Forests were not surveyed in 2025. Out of the 9.2 million acres flown, approximately 76,000 acres were found to have insect disease and abiotic issues, excluding fire, with a little more than 50% being from bark beetles. Beyond survey work and insect trap monitoring, forest health federal grant funding can be utilized for on-ground project work. When available, state trust lands are treated with funding from the State Trust Preservation and Enhancement Account, and that is matched with forest health funding. A good example of a recent project located in the Laramie Mountain Range is shown on this slide. State Forestry prioritizes areas that not only improves on the return of merchantable saw timber for state trust lands, but can also provide the best benefits for forest health and fuels reduction when it comes to mitigating impacts to wildland fires. This area is also located in a wildland-urban interface, and while it is being thinned with lower trees per acre to mitigate against mountain pine beetles, it also reduces the intensity a wildfire will move through a forested stand, allowing firefighters to have a safer and increased chance to suppress wildfire. In 2025, we started the year with a high amount of drought across the entire state. As the year continued, you can see the shift in the drought moving from east to west. Drought can have a substantial impact when it comes to the health of Wyoming's forests, as prolonged drought often leads to increases in tree mortality caused by insects and disease. Bark beetle epidemics are frequently the result of 3+ years in a row of significant drought. Many places in Wyoming have now experienced at least 3 years of significant drought. The mountain pine beetle continues to remain a concern across Wyoming's forests, and we're closely monitoring their activity. Mountain pine beetle continues to increase in frequency and acreage across the Black Hills, with the highest concentrations located in Spearfish Canyon, South Dakota. Damage is typically found in the steep or remote unmanaged areas. Survey results from the Bighorn Mountains confirm the mountain pine beetle continues to slowly increase in frequency across the eastern slope. Highest signs of activity are from Story, Wyoming, south along that eastern front in the lower elevation Ponderosa pine forests. On the western side of the Bighorn Mountains, the western spruce spudworm has grown in acreage, but in the very southern part, the decline has really happened in the western spruce spudworm in that southern Bighorn area. The Bridger Teton National Forest continues to maintain high levels of pine beetle mortality, especially in 5-needle pine trees such as limber and whitebark pines. Unfortunately, smoke from the Dollar Lake fire hindered survey work on the forest last year, and a complete survey of western spruce budworm did not happen. So as for the spruce beetle activity on the BT, it continues to be pretty active. And we put on this map where the Pack Trail fire was, and I think Dollar Lake, and you can see the 2024 Pack Trail fire did burn a large portion of susceptible trees to spruce beetle. I do want to provide the legislature with an important information about identified mountain pine beetle outbreak occurring just south of us on the Colorado Front Range. We do not believe our Wyoming forests will be at major risk from this growing outbreak. The Wyoming side of the Snowies and the Sierra Madres have already experienced mountain pine beetle epidemics, followed by numerous wildfires that burned large portions of the forest, which connects to this landscape. We do want to make sure, though, that infested firewood or logs from the Front Range are not being transported into our Wyoming communities, as this could cause unintended outbreaks within our Wyoming community forests. From the latest U.S. Forest Service Forest Health Risk Report, over the last 12 years, Wyoming has grown in the acres of forested lands at risk of insect and disease mortality. This is a bit of a doomsday map. Whenever I get asked what keeps me up at night, a map such as this is one of those. But beyond that, the point I want to make here is there continues to be increasing risk in Wyoming's forests to insect and disease outbreaks due to our aging forests and reductions in active management over the last few decades. Of Wyoming's 10.8 million acres of forested land, 26% are expected to see 25% loss in live trees in the next 15 years from insects and disease. This prediction includes the loss from insects and disease in roadless areas to be up to 838,000 acres, just under 1 million acres. So understanding the data and predictions is no longer enough. We must get to work on changing the magnitude of our forest health concerns. So last year, President Trump implemented Executive Order 142256, the immediate expansion of the American timber production, and Governor Gordon implemented Executive Order 2025-04, increasing active forest management in Wyoming. Wyoming State Forestry is taking both executive orders seriously and have been working hard to increase active management on federal, state, and private forest lands. In fiscal year 2025, State Forestry sold 4 million board feet of timber on 889 acres of state trust lands. Active management on state trust lands is critical to maintaining forest health, and State Forestry currently has 28 active contracts that are thinning, harvesting, and improving forest health on 4,140 acres. The Good Neighbor Authority program allows the state to partner with the federal agencies to do work on federal lands by utilizing our staff's expertise and contracting systems to help get more work done on the ground. Last fiscal year, State Forestry sold 12.26 million board feet of timber on 3,350 acres of federal lands. We sold 100% of the timber coming off of the Bridger Teton National Forest and close to 13% of the total timber that came off of Wyoming's federal forest last year. With the additional staffing that we've built up in this last year, we are slated to sell 65% of the total timber off the U.S. Forest Service lands this year in Wyoming. We've already sold over 50%. We might know what timber sale that was. So with that, though, I do want to have a few more highlights here with our Good Neighbor Authority program. With that, we've sold 4 pretty large deck sales on 4 different national forests following the 2024 fire season. So we had one in the Bighorn National Forest, we had one in the Shoshone, one in the Bridger-Teton, and we did have a large deck sale on the Medicine Bow that was actually benefiting aspen enhancement treatments. With that, we also formed a new federal partnership with the Bureau of Reclamation to complete fuels mitigation projects at Keyhole State Park. This is the first of its kind in the nation. We also recently sold a 5 million board foot timber sale on 1,300 acres in the Bear Lodge Ranger District, helping to increase active management on the Wyoming side of the Black Hills while providing an important supply of timber to local mills in the area. In January, Governor Gordon and U.S. Forest Service Chief Tom Schultz signed an updated shared stewardship agreement. The agreement reflects significant progress Wyoming has made with the U.S. Forest Service in the past 5 years, while including the majority of the 2020 framework. The addendum includes additional work that Wyoming State Forestry is committed to, including 2 pilot projects that will be landscape scale and size for state forestry to administer all timber sale projects within them. One landscape will be in the Bighorn National Forest, and the other landscape will be in the Bridger-Teton National Forest. Additionally, the addendum includes a commitment to explore collaborative opportunities in recreation, energy development, and grazing. Shifting from forest management, I would like to provide a 2025 fire season year in review. Last year, Wyoming had another above average fire year and reported 1,664 fires on approximately 250,000 acres. 79% of the fires reported were on state and private lands, with 35% of the acres burned. 18 emergency fire suppression account fires were approved within 8 different counties. Estimated cost share responsibilities for these 18 fires amounted to approximately $20 million, with total cost of these fires estimating to be $55 million. One FEMA Fire Management Assistant Grant fire was approved, the Red Canyon Fire located in Hot Springs County. This means the state can be reimbursed for certain costs associated with the Red Canyon Fire. State Forestry celebrated our 22nd year of operation for the HeliTAC program. Thanks to Wyoming's legislature, funding was increased last year, allowing for a second contracted helicopter to help with response. Last summer, HeliTAC responded to 2 or 4 or 3, depending on the day, fires, and between the 2 helicopters, a Type 3 and a Type 2. The program had a total of 96 initial attack fires within 14 counties. The 2024 legislative session also provided necessary funding for a helibase at the Casper-Natrona County International Airport, right next to the Casper Tanker Base. Construction has been going smoothly, and the base will be able to fit up to 3 helicopters with living quarters for 12 seasonals starting this fall. Thank you to Wyoming Legislature for your support in this much-needed resource. Our single-engine air tanker program had a great 6th season of operation, responding to fires within the state. The SEAT Aviation program is a true collaborative, as our seats are hosted by the BLM seat bases located in Casper. They've been located in Warren and even Rock Springs last summer, or at the Gillette Airport in coordination with Campbell County Fire. The contracted seats responded to 76 initial attack fires, supporting 18 Wyoming counties that really ended up giving over 189,000 gallons of retardant. State Forestry Smokebuster Crew, which is our inmate hand crew, had another busy fire season, responding to 10 wildfires in 6 different counties, as well as fire in South Dakota. While not suppressing wildfires, the crew worked diligently on fuels mitigation treatments and completed 156 acres along the highway right-of-ways in coordination with Wyoming Department of Transportation. The crew also burned over 3,000 brush piles over this last winter months. I do want to acknowledge another important item when it comes to wildfire management in 2025. State Forestry, in coordination with the Wyoming Rural Fire Association and Wyoming Fire Chiefs Association, updated the emergency fire suppression account rules for the first time in 21 years. The update was finalized last October. We also started new rules on how private insurance company resources are to be coordinated during wildfires in Wyoming. These rules will become final in the next month or so. After the historic 2024 fire year, Wyoming's wildfire community had to take a hard look at how we had been managing wildfire over the last decades and started to focus on updating and improving our management and coordination at state and local levels. The result is new rules or needed updates to rules to better reflect the changes in wildfire suppression response. It has been a big lift, but a very worthy one. And I want to thank the Wyoming Rural Fire Association and the Wyoming Fire Chiefs Association for their leadership in this work. Lastly, I do want to finish with some 2025 cooperative forestry assistance highlights. Last year, as part of our efforts to increase active forest management in Wyoming, State Forestry organized or participated in 6 forest landowner workshops that had participation from 866 Wyoming residents in the Black Hills, Bighorn Mountains, Casper Mountain, Laramie Peak, and Tie-Siding areas. In 2024, State Forestry received $1.5 million grant from the U.S. Forest Service to provide cost-share assistance to private landowners for forest treatments. The first round of projects was approved in 2025, and currently 900 acres are being treated through this grant. Every year, State Forestry gives out awards to deserving contributors to Wyoming's forests. The 2025 Outstanding Urban and Community Forestry Program was awarded to Rittenden Cheyenne, and the 2025 Outstanding Arborist of the Year went to Laura Schumann from Buffalo, Wyoming. The 2025 Forest Landowner of the Year is Gregory Wittenberg from Converse County. Mr. Wittenberg has shown an incredible commitment to forest stewardship for nearly 30 years, building on work started by his family in the northern Laramie Range by completing harvesting and thinning projects, a shaded fuel break along access roads, and partnering with Wyoming Game and Fish on aspen enhancement projects. And with that, I will conclude my report and turn it over to Allison Richards from the U.S. Forest Service for an update.
Thank you, Kelly. Good evening, Chairman Ide. Thank you for having us this evening. I do want to take just a moment. I'd already introduced myself, but we have quite a few other Forest Service folks that have joined us today. So I want to take a moment just to recognize them. And if there's questions that come up specific later to their units, perhaps they would be able to answer those. So with me this evening is Bunny Maceo, Deputy Regional Forester from the Rocky Mountain Region. Thank you, Bunny. Intermountain Region Acting Deputy Regional Forester Chad Hudson. Thanks, Chad. Let's see. Andrew Johnson from the Bighorn National Forest. Andrew is a forest supervisor. Sean Cochran from the Black Hills National Forest. Don Label from the Medicine Bow Route Thunder Basin National Grasslands. Ken Coffin, Shoshone National Forest, and Becky Hotsey from the Bridger Teton. So thank you for joining us this evening. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Wyoming State Forestry Division, Wyoming Agricultural Department, Wyoming Game and Fish, Wyoming State Parks, and Wyoming Department of Transportation for their respective staff and their continuing the partnership. So thank you very much. The USDA Forest Service is excited to move into a new era of shared stewardship with the state of Wyoming, centered around our mutual commitments to collaborative planning and management, expanding existing successful partnerships and programs, and resource sharing to facilitate work across the landscape. Together, we can address the challenges faced by the managers of the nation's forests and grasslands. The first topic I'd like to highlight for you this evening is wildland fire management. From the national, regional, and forest level leadership down to the boots on the ground, we strive to coordinate seamlessly across jurisdictional boundaries to provide timely and aggressive initial response, foster operational alignment, and the sharing of resources for the benefit of the values we all collectively protect. Last year on Forest Service jurisdiction, we had 137 wildland fires, which burned approximately 28,000 acres. Of the 137 fires, 3 fires on the Bridger Teton National Forest, the Dollar Lake, Willow Creek, and the Horse Fire were responsible for 96% of the acres burned. The Forest Service accomplished over 152,000 acres of hazardous fuels treatments, utilizing various methods of implementation, such as mechanical treatments, targeted grazing, weed spraying, prescribed fire, and beneficial acres. Lastly, the agency is happy to support the state of Wyoming through various fire-related grants, such as Community Assistance Funds adjacent to federal lands, or CAFA grants, Wildland Urban Interface competitive grants, and Community Wildfire Defense grants. In total, $562,000 was awarded to the state in 2025. Another aspect of wildland fire is recovery. Over the past 2 years, forests across Wyoming have received over $9.8 million in American Relief Act funding to aid in restoration of landscapes affected by a wind event in 2022 and multiple fires in 2024. A critical piece of land management across Wyoming that I know you and your communities have great interest in is timber management. Active forest management plays a central role in our work to create and maintain healthy and resilient landscapes while providing important economic benefits to local communities throughout Wyoming. The Forest Service recognizes the timber industry and associated sawmill infrastructure are an integral part in our collective efforts to successfully promote forest health and reduce wildfire risk to communities, natural resources, and critical infrastructure. As part of that recognition, from 2023 to 2025, the Forest Service, through state, private, and tribal forestry, provided over $7 million in grant funding to support the Wyoming timber industry. This funding was provided in the form of 4 Wood Innovation Grants, 1 Wood Products Infrastructure Assistant Grant, and 4 Hazardous Fuels Transportation Assistant Grants. In fiscal year 2025, Wyoming National Forest produced 43 million board feet of timber to contribute to local mills and wood products infrastructure. Of the 43.2 million board feet, the Good Neighbor Agreement with Wyoming State Forestry Division contributed 12.3 million board feet, or 13% of the volume delivered. Initial estimates of production for 2026 from all sources, this includes Forest Service contracts, Good Neighbor Agreements, and stewardship, is planned for approximately 85 million board feet coming off of National Forest System lands within the state of Wyoming, of which we expect Good Neighbor Agreements with State Forestry Division to produce 50.1 million board feet, or 65% of the volume. Our Good Neighbor Agreements with Wyoming State Forestry Division have made a substantial impact, both in terms of yield and outcomes on the ground. We cannot thank our Wyoming State Forestry partners enough for leaning into active forest management with us. Kelly, Matt, thank you very much for the work you're doing. Under the umbrella of the Wyoming Shared Stewardship Agreement, the Forest Service has reaffirmed our commitment to working collaboratively with the state on securing the timber industry, revitalizing economies, and protecting communities from catastrophic wildfire. Leadership at both the state and federal level are working to add an additional $2 million to a supplemental agreement for active forest management to continue to build upon this work. Through these efforts and others, we seek to increase collaboration and cross-boundary work, leverage all available tools and authorities, and share capacity and resources of the collective to accomplish the highest priority work. Another valued piece of our land management toolkit is range. With 529 active allotments supporting over 180,000 cattle, horse, and sheep, the Forest Service recognizes the importance of public land grazing to rural communities across Wyoming. We continue to welcome engagement from the ranching community and range advocates such as Wyoming Stock Growers Association, Wyoming Wool Growers Association, University of Wyoming Cooperative Extension, and Wyoming Farm Bureau, among others, as we work to promote sustainable grazing through the range program. In October, Secretary Rollins announced the USDA DOI Grazing Action Plan as part of a broader USDA plan for strengthening the livestock industry and prioritizing American farmers and ranchers while increasing production of food and fiber for American consumers. The Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management are poised to begin implementing the Grazing Action Plan in fiscal year 26, with an emphasis on unlocking grazing opportunities, streamlining authorizations, giving ranchers a voice, keeping working lands working, and improving coordination between the two agencies. Production and access to public lands is a priority for the chief and the administration. It is the goal to increase oil, gas, and coal and mineral production. The numbers in my testimony are from 2024. We will provide the committee with the 2025 production numbers when they are released in the spring. Starting with coal, the Medicine Bow Route National Forest and Thunder Basin National Grasslands have one of the largest mineral programs in the National Forest System. Most of the development occurs on the Thunder Basin National Grassland, located within the Powder River Basin. Thunder Basin National Grassland manages 4 active coal mines and on average produce about 20% of the nation's coal, which generates 10% of the nation's electricity and provides between 4,000 and 5,000 jobs. The Forest Service manages over 1,000 active oil and/or gas leases, covering approximately 319,000 acres with 700 active oil and gas wells on the Thunder Basin National Grassland. Portions of 9 conventional oil and gas plays identified by the USGS and the BLM fall within the boundaries of the grasslands. In fiscal year 2024, oil well development on the Thunder Basin National Grassland produced over 1.8 million barrels of crude oil, worth over $136 million, and generated $17 million in royalty revenue. Natural gas production on the grasslands exceeded 29 million thousand cubic feet of natural gas and generated close to $118 million in royalty revenue. In total, oil, gas, natural gas liquids, and coal production occurring on the grasslands generated a total of $196 million in royalty revenue. Looking ahead, I'd like to update you on forest plan revisions. As you know, conditions on the ground are continually changing. We address those changes through a plan revision process. The Forest Service is currently undertaking land management plan revisions for 2 units in Wyoming, the Black Hills and the Bridger-Teton National Forest. The first phase of the plan revision process is the assessment phase. For the Black Hills, the revised assessment was completed in December 2023. The transition to the planning phase begins with conversations about the need to change. In other words, why do we need a new plan? The need for change supports potential plan content as well as required processes for a wild and scenic river eligibility, potential species of conservation concern, recreation opportunity mapping, timber suitability and modeling, and wilderness inventory and evaluation. The forest is continuing efforts around engagement with the cooperating agencies through working sessions and recently established working groups. This engagement informs the need to change and the notice of intent for the forest plan, which is intended to be released in 2026, followed by public comment. Likewise, the Bridger-Teton National Forest is making progress in their forest plan revision efforts. They released the draft assessment for public review in summer 2025, supported by public meetings throughout the year. In December 2025, Bridger-Teton hosted a need to change workshop with cooperating agencies to address key interests and concerns. Tribes have also been engaged in reviewing the draft assessment and contributing to the development of the need to change. There's been a great deal of interest in the roadless rule in the state of Wyoming. I would like to take this opportunity to offer an update on the roadless rule and NEPA regulations. The Forest Service is in the process of reconsidering the 2001 roadless rule. The roadless rule established prohibitions on road construction, road reconstruction, and timber harvesting in inventoried roadless areas on National Forest System lands. Within Wyoming, there are more than 9.2 million acres of National Forest System lands, of which 3.2 million acres are in inventoried roadless areas. Concerns with the 2001 roadless rule are generally around limits on the ability to manage those lands to prevent catastrophic impacts to forest ecosystems. There is particular concern about the ability to manage forests adjacent to or near wildland-urban interfaces and other highly valued assets. During the public comment period, there were a significant number of comments, approximately 200,000, received by the agency. The draft environmental impact statement analyzing the proposed rescission of the 2001 roadless rule is planned to be released to the public this spring. The USDA released an interim final rule revamping the NEPA regulations for the entire department in July of 2025. The The new proposed regulations clarify several aspects of what is and what is not required in the NEPA process. Just as one of many examples, the Forest Service will no longer need to go through a scoping process for environmental assessments. The new regulations show promise of more localized decision space and in a shorter time frame. In closing, I would like to thank you for inviting the Forest Service to today's hearing, and I appreciate the time and the opportunity to visit with you. And with that, Kelly, I'll hand it back to you.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Chairman Ides, members of the legislature, appreciate you having me here this evening to speak to you on behalf of BLM Wyoming. I also have some folks I'd like to introduce with us. I have my Deputy State Director, Jennifer Fleury McConkey. She's of Resources and Planning. Brad Purdy is Senior Advisor. Mark Gortel, Branch Chief. Richard Putnam, Assistant State Fire Management Officer. And last but not least, Paul Hone, State Fire Management Officer. BLM Wyoming manages significant resources across the state. The forestry program is actively managing forestry resources for long-term health, resiliency, and local economic opportunities. BLM Wyoming has 5 field-level forester positions, with 4 that are currently staffed and a state lead position. Based on a fiscal year contribution from 2024, the Department of the Interior and BLM Economic Analysis, the BLM Wyoming Forestry Program provided $61.2 million in total economic contribution to Wyoming's economy. Fiscal year 2025 reports have not been published at this time. BLM Wyoming offered 7.6 million board feet, which we ramped up from our original offer last year from the executive order of 4.5. Unfortunately, we sold only 4.4 million of that 7.6 we offered. BLM Wyoming sells thousands of firewood cords for personal and commercial use each year. And we use that to treat thousands of acres of forested land and to reduce hazardous fuels, and also to restore and improve forest health each year. Using the Good Neighbor Authority in conjunction with Wyoming State Forestry Division, BLM Wyoming has implemented numerous projects across boundaries, allowing for management at landscape scales and improving accessibility to forest resources and products. Almost 1 million board foot was sold under GNA in fiscal year 25 out of our Rollins field office, including 40 Miles Flats GNA and Fallen Pines GNA reoffer. For the last several years, firewood and Christmas tree permits have been available for sale online. The public has generally responded positively to this convenience the system offers, and the number of permits sold annually has doubled since the program was launched. BLM Wyoming is seeing record sales of both Christmas trees and fuel wood due to the convenience of online permitting and the Interior Secretary directing the BLM to launch the $1 tree initiative, reducing prices of both Christmas trees and fuel wood cords to $1 for each. This was between December 4th, 2025 and January 31st, 2026. The limits per person were also raised, up from 1 Christmas tree to 3 per person, and 10 fuel wood cords, an increase from the previous limits of 5. There's been such great response to the $1 tree initiative that the BLM Wyoming State Director determined we will keep the program in place rather than allowing it to expire at the end of January. Whitebark pine was listed as threatened species by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service in December of 2022. BLM Wyoming is actively creating strategies to protect and enhance whitebark pine habitat. The whitebark pine range-wide programmatic Section 7 consultation for BLM timber sale and harvest projects was signed by the Fish and Wildlife Service on June 18th of 2025, which streamlines our endangered species compliance for individual forest management projects. The range-wide programmatic consultation for all other activities, including fuels reduction management, was signed on August 26, 2025 by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. BLM Wyoming is continuing to see large amounts of defoliation from western spruce budworm going into the 8th year of that outbreak. An increased mortality from spruce beetle and Douglas fir beetle, possibly linked to trees stressed from drought and defoliation, has also been observed. BLM periodically meets with entomologists from the Forest Service Forest Health Protection Program to assess the western spruce budworm outbreak in southern bighorns, and the Buffalo Field Office continues to treat our Douglas fir stands that are infested. In fiscal year 2025, the BLM Wyoming Fuels Management Program treated 171,423 acres. This included 14,070 acres treated in the forest and woodlands ecosystem. The primary objectives include reducing conifer encroachment within aspen stands and in sagebrush, forest thinning to increase forest health and vigor, and reducing the fuel load to decrease wildfire risk and severity, and restoring riparian areas, and improving habitat for species including mule deer, elk, bighorn sheep, and the greater sage grouse. This is being accomplished using a variety of techniques including hand thinning, mastication, herbicide treatments, prescribed fire, and of course, timber sales. On March 1st, 2025, the President issued Executive Order 14225, immediate expansion of American timber production. The order recognizes the critical nature of timber and other forest products for the nation and the contribution that forest management can have for wildfire risk reduction efforts. It also directs the BLM and other agencies to update policies and processes to increase timber production and sound forest management, including streamlining our NEPA and Endangered Species Act consultation, improving good neighbor and stewardship contracting, and improving Tribal Forest Protection Act implementation guidance. BLM Wyoming increased the fiscal year 25 timber sale offerings from 5.2 to 7.6 to comply with this executive order, and we expect our targets to increase each subsequent year. The One Big Beautiful Bill requires BLM to increase timber sold by 20 million board feet more than the quantity sold the previous year, each year through 2034. Targets for the BLM public domain were 40 million board feet in 2025 and are expected to reach 50 million board feet by 2029. The BLM looks forward to continuing to work with our state and our federal partners and private industry to manage towards healthy and productive and fire-resistant and sustainable forests. Partnerships are vital to managing sustainable working public lands. Again, thank you for having me here to speak with you today. The BLM appreciates maintaining direct communications with all of you. And I'm pleased to answer any further questions the committee might have.
All right, we're ready to take on the questions that you may have. He's got them right over there. All right.
Testing. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, ladies, for those wonderful presentations. A lot of information to take in. I should have recognized, I don't know what other legislators we have in here. We have Senator Hicks, been on Ag Committee a lot in the past, and Senator Driscoll, that's been here a long time. Both of them, they've worked a lot of this stuff a lot more than I have. I'm pretty much a greenhorn at this, but I will open it up for questions from the audience right now and bring the mic to you if anybody wants to start in. Just raise your hand.
Give it to Larry. Yeah, give it to Larry.
Larry, you have a question? Senator Hicks?
Yeah, and this would be specific as it relates to the cooperating agency authority associated with the two plan revisions. So Just a curiosity is as to what level of engagements from those supervisors have you had with both the county commissioners and those conservation districts? And then what level of cooperating agency have they received? Is it all the way down to the IT level? Where has that bar been set for that cooperating agency process? So if one of the four supervisors may want to take that, but it seems that we have both the Black Hills, which is ongoing, but also the BT would be the first question.
That is a very good question.
First victim.
We can, yeah. And Sean, you're more than welcome to even come up to whatever.
I'll stay back here. No, speaking specifically to the forest plan, we do have cooperating agency agreements with all 7 counties, 2 in Wyoming and the other 5 in South Dakota. Basically, those are forest plan specific for those counties to weigh in with all the various meetings, teams, and committees that we have around every topic associated with forest plan revision. And that process is beginning in earnest with the Black Hills Forest Plan revision. There is a select group that we pulled from those counties to look at growth and yield modeling on the Black Hills National Forest. So that team's getting started right now. And so we're going to continue that process as we move forward with all the various topics that we have. And leading all the way up to notice of intent that will come, like Elliot mentioned, later this year. And then that's when it gets way into the weeds around planning and specific topics for, Cook and Weston County and on the Wyoming side. They may have different issues than the other counties in South Dakota. So that's an evolving process and heavily engaged, and that participation is only going to ramp up as we get closer to the notice of intent, and then it really will become a very heavily engaged process.
While he still has it, if you could give us kind of a estimated time of where we're at as far as the draft. Just an idea where you're at with each one of your processes. Kind of an idea where we're looking maybe as a draft.
Yeah, for the Black Hills, we were actually hoping to issue the notice of intent in January of this year, and then the furlough process happened, and that pushed everything back for at least 45 days. And then the other wrinkle that is coming into play right now is the Department of Agriculture wants to complete a 12-week review process before we can actually start forest plan revision. I just learned about that before I came over. I don't have all the details of what that review is going to entail, what questions are going to be associated with the review. So and hopefully it won't go with the full 12 weeks, but if it does, we're probably looking at the earliest start date sometime this summer, is where we're thinking. And then as far as going through the process, developing a draft, we're probably looking at another full year once the NOI is initiated to start forming a draft. And typical forest plans take 2 to 3 years from the time the NOI starts to the time we actually get something that goes out to the public.
Does that answer your question, Senator Hicks, or you want to follow up there?
The BT, I'd like to give them an opportunity to answer the same question, so.
Okay.
What?
Sure.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, what's that?
I'll come here.
Yeah, good.
Hello, I'm Chad Hudson, the Forest Supervisor on the Bridger Teton National Forest. I'm actually on a detail, but as a Deputy Regional Forester, but this is a topic I enjoy talking about quite a bit. We have fully embraced the cooperative agency kind of approach on the Bridger Teton. We work with the county commissioners of Teton, Sublette County, and Lincoln County, and their conservation districts, all the applicable state agency heads in the governor's office. We finished our assessment in a very timely manner. And if I recall correctly, I think we embraced and incorporated 86% of the comments from the cooperative agencies into our assessment. Much better product. I'm convinced that we have a much better product since the cooperators have provided input. It's a more balanced product. We're now entered into the need for change document. And we actually just held a meeting in Marbleton not too long ago. And the intent was not to, for the Forest Service to write the need for change. It really was, we're writing it together. Everybody showed up with notes, and we got to business. And within a day, we walked out with pretty much a draft. And since then, we've kind of cleaned that up, handed it back to the cooperating agencies, and we're looking forward to their feedback here soon. So we're moving pretty quickly. And I think it's because of the cooperative nature we have and the well-balanced team, and they're fully committed. We're really working through this quickly. We meet on a monthly basis, and you ask about the forest supervisors' engagement. I'm at every single meeting. I believe the decision makers should be in the room, working with everybody to ensure that voices are heard and we're producing well-balanced products. So as far as timeline is concerned, I hesitate to give timelines. And the reason being is this. I prefer to talk about sequencing. So right now we're working on the need for change document, then we'll go into wild and scenic, and then a wilderness evaluation inventory. And the reason I like to talk about sequencing more than timelines is because I don't want to move on to the next step until we have a good common ground and we're feeling good as a cooperative agency and a team that we're ready to move on to the next step. We want to make sure that we're providing good products and we're all moving at the same speed. So I would say looking forward, we would like to get the everything all buttoned up and ready to go for NOI probably in 2027 would be my guess.
I don't know how to run this. So a follow-up on that is timelines sometimes are important, particularly in the case of the BT. How long has it been since there has been a plan revision?
91. Whole
91.
plan. Yep. And I'm very aware of the fact that there's been several attempts, let's say false starts. I will say the big difference is we have full engagement. I don't think I could stop this if I wanted to. There's a lot of momentum. The state agencies, and Kelly's part of that, and the county commissioners, the conservation districts, we're all in. And I feel like because we have the right people at the table, we've had good engagement with the public, with all the various stakeholders. We've had lots of good public meetings. We're in a better position this year to ensure, this time around, to ensure that we're successful.
So now I have the question for some of your counterparts. This would be specific to the Medbo route. The state's been in a process for a number of years trying to do a land exchange with the Medbo route National Forest. And I was wondering if we could just get an update on where that process is at.
Here, I got it.
Referring to for the reservoir,
That's
the
correct.
Britannia,
Yes, ma'am.
I believe. I'm not positive where that one is. I believe I believe that's the one that we're working with the ATI to go up to the region for the regional appraisers to start working on it. So I actually have a meeting tomorrow with Sevi on this exact topic.
Thank you. That's good to hear. So let's get this
Yeah,
thing going.
it is. We are working through
It's
it.
been languishing a little bit, so.
We are working through it. It's just as with the furlough and then losing some staff, it's with the reduction in capacity at the regional office, especially in their land staff, they've got a bit of a skeleton crew, and so we're trying to manage it with the limited capacity we're working through. But it is still moving forward slowly but surely.
Thank you. Montana's showing some success in getting rid of their wilderness study areas. Can you tell me where that's at? What are the chances of us getting them removed in Wyoming as well? They sure cause an impediment in the Bighorns. If we could get rid of a bunch of wilderness study areas, I think it'd change forest management dramatically in Wyoming. Can somebody from the Forest Service tell me one where Montana's getting with it? Steve Daines, I think, is bringing a bill on it. And what would be the process for us to get the same done in Wyoming? It would actually turn the Bighorns back into a managed forest again.
Who wants to take that?
I think Andrew is poised to answer that question.
Andrew?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Andrew Johnson, Forest Supervisor on the Bighorn. And so What we have on the Bighorn is a lot of roadless, inventoried roadless areas. We don't have any official wilderness study areas. There's one recommended wilderness in the forest plan, not on the forest. We have no WSAs on the forest, but there are on BLM lands adjacent to the forest.
You're roadless, mainly.
Yes, yes.
What would it take for us to get that rescinded?
Well, so the roadless rule process is underway, a potential rescission of the roadless rule. It's too early really to speculate on what that final product is going to look like. What I have expressed to the Washington office, and Kelly and I have talked about what would be beneficial to the Bighorns is to ensure whatever comes out of that roadless rule rescission process is an ability to treat lands in our municipal watersheds and in the wildland urban interface, those additional exemptions. So right now, because the roadless rule was enjoined when the Bighorn did its forest plan in 2005, we have 148,000 acres and 50% of our suitable timber base is in roadless. That makes it really, really hard to manage. And so with either a full rescission of the rule or a decision that would move the roadless boundaries back to the forest plan boundaries and give us the exemptions to work in the municipal watersheds in the WUI. Again, that frees up a significant portion of our suitable timber base, which allows us to, address some of that residual risk on the landscape, generate a higher degree of timber volume, and get some more good work done. But again, that process is that EIS is just being developed right now, and we don't know what's going to come out the other end. But hopefully, it's an answer like that.
And I can follow up a little bit for you, Senator Driscoll. Couple things. Probably in Montana, they have more WSAs that are on Forest Service lands. There are some WSAs on Forest Service lands. They're far few between. There's one, I think, on the BT, and you have two in the BT. For some reason, I thought there was one in the Shoshone. There is one in the Shoshone. The rest of them are on mainly Bureau of Land Management lands. I don't know if you remember, but WCCA did the Wyoming Public Lands Initiative. And quite a few of the counties that went through the Wyoming Public Lands Initiative, it was that grassroots stakeholder groups, came up with recommendations to go into law with those WSAs. Some of them were to be fully released. Some of them, I know specifically for the Bighorn Mountains in the BLM areas, were to be special management areas. And then some of them were to be put into wilderness areas. So it was a blend. That has been with, I believe, Senator Barrasso a couple times. He's been trying to push that through, as well as Senator Lummis. So it is something that WCCA continues to work on, and it's been in part of different packages for Wyoming in particular. So, but the roadless rule is significant to Wyoming when it comes to, like you heard, the Bighorns, when it comes to the Bridger Teton. There's places in the Medbo, as well as in the Wyoming Black Hills side. So it would have some major changes for almost all of our forests if that does get rescinded.
Thank you. And then probably last, what's the thoughts on projected window on actual harvest in the Black Hills for the next 3 years? I know what the SQs look like, and we're not getting that much timber. Part of the guys are sitting behind me here. My town's dependent on timber harvest out of the Black Hills. We continue to do projections that we don't reach. What can you tell me about what we're doing to try to get to actual harvest rather than saying we're doing something on paper and then it doesn't get there?
Thank you for the question. I can speak to some of the work that the Black Hills has been doing around the 10-year strategy for watershed planning. So they've gone through the NEPA, or they're going through the NEPA process, looking at the watersheds on a watershed basis and doing two watersheds a year. So speaking with Sean, the forest supervisor, they have a plan to be able to produce the 120,000 CCF for the next 3 years. And now that doesn't get to your question on how much of that volume goes to market and actually to the mills. That's a nuanced question that I'm not poised to be able to answer today, but I can get with the Black Hills and get back to you on, exactly what are the market conditions and other things that are driving some of that.
I'd appreciate it. I think I've been asking this for about 15 years, Larry. And I think we've met the quota exactly 0 times.
I will say this, Senator Driscoll. We had a meeting in the Black Hills in May and made it really clear that we had an emergency. And we didn't have time for 10-year plans. We don't have time for 5-year plans. We have time for 6-month plans. And that's all I was going to put up with. And the Forest Service and NWTF, the National Wildlife Turkey, and State Forestry got together and literally moved NEPA as quickly as possible through the process to get a substantial amount of timber out the door. So we got sales out by the end of last year as quickly as possible. The Forest Service did move staff to get that going in the Bear Lodge. We had our staff in the Bear, and NWTF did too. And I do want to say there is some successes happening. The needle is slow, but the ship is no longer sinking. It's coming back up. And it is incredibly important that we continue to push on this and focus on what 1 year, 2 year, 5 years is actually going to look like.
Thank you. You really hard me. That's why I asked 3 years. I wouldn't want to look far out. I just wanted to see in the direction, right? My next question to you, and you've heard me ask this before on helicopters and the sort of things. What can we do to support you to make that harvest get there? Not just Black Hills, Mid-Bow, forest-wide. How do we actually get it? Everywhere we've done active forest management, and I'm seeing it on your maps, I'm seeing the test, everywhere we do active forest management, our fire costs drop, our management costs drop, and I want to know what the state can do to help facilitate that, because we want to be partners with the Forest Service. And what I see is managed forests are healthy forests, and, you know, we want to know how to help do it. We hear all the time. I see plans and I see they look good, but when we really get down to it, at the end of the day, often we just bog down. And I want to be one of the ones for me. And you've seen it. The state invested, I think, in our pine beetle hut, Larry, 10 twice, $30 million maybe. State's willing to invest in Wyoming as long as we actually get results. And for us, I can tell you our colleagues, Larry was one of the ones that helped me when we did it. It was very unpopular in the Senate when we started out. Right now, the Wyoming Senate, when you step up and say you want to do something, and the House is much the same way, doesn't matter if it's firefighting or timber management, the state wants to be a willing partner and a helping partner. We're willing to not only give money, but to do what we can do politically to help. And I'm kind of reaching out to you because it's been a surprise. Kelly saw it. We actually, that helicopter fleet happened in 15 minutes in the hallway. And, you know, I kind of threw it out as a joke. And it's interesting because we're doing modules this year now. And I don't want to do firefighting very bad. I'm going to be honest with you. I want to do forest management.
Are you going to add to that? Do I give you, or do you want me to answer?
No, and I do want to kind of add on to that. And it's kind of the same question, but a different way to pose it. And Kelly, it basically came down to your presentation. You know, 26% of our national forests are expected to die through diseases and beetle kills. So we're talking millions of acres.
Yes.
And I had a very good friend that coined the terminology is we're far past the time where we can prescribe 1 acre solution to million acre problems. And I think that's what Senator Driscoll's trying to get here is we're willing to make the investment, but we have to have a partner. You have to be able to communicate what tools can we best deploy from our side of the equation. But folks, we've got a multi-million acre problem out there. And quite frankly, we need to be able to drive an economy out of that other than firefighting. And so my question to you as the regional office, but also I would ask for each one of the line office, what specific tools that you envision that we could deploy or assist with at the state level? Is it more GNA foresters?
Mm-hmm.
Is it more matching funds? Is it more fire? What resources do you feel that would enhance the partnership to treat the million acre solutions that are facing all of us? So start out with the regional forester, and then but I would like to go all the way down to, because it's going to be different on every forest.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I'll start by acknowledging our workforce. So we've had, as Dawn and others have alluded to, some pretty significant reductions in workforce through deferred resignation or voluntary early retirement. And, you know, being able to leverage the Good Neighbor Agreement with the state of Wyoming, as you heard in my testimony, has paid dividends. We've gone from essentially a negligible, you know, contribution from the state to 59% of our volume delivered is going to be through GNA. And that frees up Forest Service employees to work on other priority work and to help fill some of those gaps. So continuing to invest in those programs has been integral to our success, and, you know, continuing to invest in those is a priority for the agency. And we're investing another $2 million into that agreement this year to expand on that work. So I think with that, I'll leave that there from the regional office and then see what the forest supervisors have to say.
You want me to go first, or? I can respond to a little bit before we go to the forest soups. You have some excellent bills right now in session called Senate File 17, GNA amendments that could really open the door to flexibility for the Good Neighbor Authority program. You also have an excellent bill called House Bill 78, which is the investment tool that you're talking about, that is setting up a system very similar to what was done in the Black Hills, right? When you invested in the Black Hills, when we had the mountain pine beetle epidemic, instead of in the past when we had forest health issues, the legislature would put that money into the emergency fire suppression account. That causes just consternation. You know that. So that we like to have our suppression money over here and our investment money over here. And so that's what that bill is going to really help with. And it is so flexible. It's a cost share program. It's going to really help us get cross-boundary work done on the ground quicker, leveraging multiple different entities and funds. When we have flexibility in the systems, that really is the way we become the most effective. So Senator Driscoll, you talked about the funding with the helicopter program. It was the flexibility of that funding that has made us so effective in the response that we can do with our contracting systems. So again, that's how I would answer your question, is the more you can provide us that flexibility, the more effective we are going to be at that state level. And I'll let the forest soups answer. Or Heidi, I didn't know if you.
I appreciate the question. I will have to have someone get back to you from our office at the state director level.
Thank you. Just real quick before we go further, I'll make a quick interruption. Yeah, I'll get to you here. I got a little backup in here right now. We got Senator Pearson, Senator Love, and Senator Dockstader. The two in the back were both on the Ag Committee, and Senator Dockstader's on Federal Natural Resource Select Committee. So thank you guys for coming here and listening. And just to hit on that before we go to that, we did just get the Good Neighbor bill out of the Senate. Everybody, the amendments to that, and what it allows is private contributions instead of just federal money to the Good Neighbor Authority. And Kelly, that's a pretty short and sweet description of it, but Senator Dockstader was the one that introduced that bill and carried it through, and we've got it over on the other side of the house right now, or the other chamber on the other side of the building. So we'll go to the next one here.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I'm Becky Hatsey, the acting forest supervisor on the Bridger Teton, sitting next to the real forest supervisor on the Bridger Teton. So to answer your question, I'm going to point back to something that Kelly had said earlier about how much of our sales have been done by the GNA or through GNA. 100% of the Bridger Teton sales this year were done through G&A. So that is critical. One of the things that we would like to do is go into a pilot test where we can go through some of the shelf stock that we have done in the Kemmerer district and work through G&A to get some material off of that district as well, which is the southernmost part of our district or part of our forest. One thing I would like to put in a pitch for with G&A, a lot of the people that were hired were at will, so we weren't able to have a lot of, well, we had a vacancy for 2 years and then it was filled and then it was vacant again a week later. So it's really difficult to build up those relationships and build up that, the momentum to get work done if they're at-will employees and then as soon as they get there, they leave. So that would be really great. And then as we look to the future and as we work down the shelf stock and start selling these timber sales, something to keep us going would be additional NEPA. And currently we're working with the Department of Ag to do NEPA for a range project. And so I would envision that we'd be able to do something similar with the state forester to do NEPA for timber sales as well. Did you want to add anything?
Anybody want to take that?
Hi, Ken Coffin. I'm the forest supervisor in the Shoshone. Yeah, I think a lot of things that have been talked about in terms of the G&A authority and having our state partners helping us, get logs on trucks, maybe do some NEPA, maybe do some administrative timber sales. That's good, and I think we need to continue down that road. But, quite honestly, I think I'd like us to think 10 years down the road, and I think there's something where we could partner with the state to be around some innovation, around low value wood, small diameter wood. There's some things that we could do collectively to create markets or solve some of the transportation issues that we've got. I would look to those bigger picture conversations because I think we're doing a lot of this stuff now. In the last couple of years, I think we've really ramped up our relationship with Kelly and her staff, and that's paying dividends. We need to continue that. But I'd really like to see some forward thinking and really sit down and see if we couldn't create some markets and be innovative about all this massive amount of small diameter, low value wood. So.
What?
Fuel. Or in addition to.
Anybody else want to?
So I think it's a great question. I think from the Bighorn, it's a similar perspective to the Shoshone. One of the when you think about the timber management program on the Bighorn, it's relatively small. Planning and NEPA are not our barrier. At our historic outputs of 12 to 13,000 CCF, I have 15 years roughly of shelf stock to offer at that level. This year, thanks to the partnership with State Forestry, we are positioned to offer as much as potentially 40,000 CCF. But the key is we're a long ways from our markets. The central and southern half of the forest, that volume typically goes to the east, to our industry partners in the Black Hills. On the north half of the forest, it historically has gone to Montana. So if we could collaborate on ways to make that transportation of that volume more efficient, we try to design our sales as efficiently as we absolutely can so that they are financially viable for our industry partners. But if we could, reduce that burden of those long haul distances, we could get more acres treated. Obviously, the roadless challenge would allow us to get more acres treated. But also on the Bighorn, we have a lot of small diameter lodgepole. And it's not a highly valuable product. And so ways that we could, partner to innovate on again, uses for that smaller diameter wood would be great. We're starting to think more about managing the offer in a market basket approach. So we recognize in the Bighorn, we're two different market baskets. We try to ensure that we're offering kind of a consistent offer on the north and the south half of the forest to those two markets. But look at, talking really closely with the Black Hills pretty regularly about the importance of that Black Hills market and how the Bighorn might be able to provide a consistent and reliable stream of volume, obviously not as big, to that market to sustain it over time.
Thanks, Andrew. So for the Black Hills, yeah, it's it's very positive to hear some of the stuff that's going through the legislative session currently. And something, Kelly and I have talked a lot about is, the role of the GNA program in the Black Hills and even cross-boundary work between the two states. I always have the split personality with the Black Hills. So, uh, there is a tremendous need there. And looking at both near term, I mean, this past year, it was a heavy lift. We took on what's called the Fort Project, which is up on the Bear Lodge, and that project moved over 60,000 CCF or 30 more million board feet into the first quarter of this year. And that has gone through the offer system. Some bumps and bruises along the way, but that volume was there. It was made available to the market. And so what we're looking at is, there's emergency planning, and there was some thinking and strategic planning with timber industry in the Black Hills to look at opportunities that, help feed into that process. But I want to move beyond, some of the emergency side and look at long-term stability, because that's what industry needs in order to stabilize and look to the future. Are there possibilities for retrofitting mills? What would that look like? What kind of capacity would be needed to support that? Is it even possible all that volume that would need to support that industry can come off the Black Hills, or is it going to come out of this greater market, which includes the Bighorn for sure? And how do we get past the logistic problems and the cost associated with that? And so that's kind of the next phase of where we're leading into, is looking at a 10-year strategy, but the 10-year strategy has near-term actions that we can take over the next 2 to 3 years. And then there's that long-term predictability that comes over that 10-year cycle. And so for the Black Hills, we're transitioning into watershed level planning. And on the Wyoming side, that's 3 large watersheds. One of them we've just entered and we're completing projects, but there's 2 others that have opportunities for us. And what we're trying to do in our near-term work is work with industries to see where the best opportunity is, how the state fits in supporting that, how the Forest Service fits in with supporting that. And not only that, how NGOs like NWTF and the Mule Deer Foundation that's currently working on the forest, how are they, supporting this effort as we go into long-term planning? Both NWTF completed projects on the Bear Lodge that went to help produce the 30 million board feet of this year. And then Mule Deer Foundation is currently expending about $2 million in heritage surveys on the South Dakota side in pre-planning to align with timber outputs for FY27. So we kind of have to build a pathway to be able to be successful. To me, the 10-year strategy drives focus so that we know where we're going. There's predictability there. And we're, working with industry partners to identify opportunity. Where do you want us to make investments in the near future? How does it support your mills and operations? How does it support conservation on the national forest? Is it addressing insect and disease issues? So all of those things are on the table. If you look at our 10-year strategy, the only thing that's not included as far as being able to be actively managed is our wilderness area. Suitable lands, unsuitable lands, 100% on the table. And we have a meeting coming up on the 24th to take another deep dive in that with both states and industry partners and NGOs coming up with a collaborative strategy. So that's what I see as the future as far as the Forest Service role in that. It is going to be constrained for a while. We don't plan on having a lot of opportunity to add additional staff in the next few years. I have 1 FSR on my forest right now. I should have 4. I think I'm down to 2 TMAs. Andrew Steele's one here in a couple of weeks. And so there's real constraints there. But we're working through those. And as Kelly alluded to, this past year, I basically dissolved district boundaries on the Black Hills. I moved close to 70 people off of my district or off of the forest on the South Dakota side to go complete work on the Bear Lodge. And so we're addressing it universally. And if things go well in Wyoming State Legislature and Kelly gets where I want to go, I think that adds tremendous capacity. But there are other issues that we're going to have to tackle, and they're not easy issues.
So I always hate going after Sean because he's always so eloquent. But I think one of the big issues for me, and that I keep hearing from Saratoga Mill in particular as well, and from some of the other folks, is we're losing loggers, period. We've got mills, but we've got no loggers to pull things out of the woods. And part of it is the cost of startups, the cost of expanding your businesses. We even recently worked with Wyoming Rural Development to have a meeting over in Saratoga with Saratoga Mill, but also some of the loggers to see if their timber production expansion program would be viable for not just the mill, but some of these other loggers who want to expand what they have now because it's so costly. So we're really losing the people that do the on-the-ground work. And in speaking to colleagues and to mill owners, we're just not sure how to increase that business sector, those jobs. But I think people can make a living from it. I think there also needs to be the programs to help them get there in the first place. And so we're trying to work with the rural Wyoming USDA rural development to see if their TPEP program will help, if they've got other ones that would be applicable to some of these smaller folks that bring everything to the mill itself. And if we lose them, what good is the mill? You're not going to be able to pull stuff out to it. So that's the thing that actually keeps me up. I think like for the Medbo, we're doing very well with our timber program. I feel very comfortable with where we're going for the next few years. You know, we do have some issues with lava and the ECA, which is restraining us, but I think we can get beyond that with a little bit of work. But to keep the two buyers we have, CTR over in Colorado and Saratoga going, we're going to be needing to have some folks to help them actually get the product to their mills. So I'm not sure what the state can do there, but it's the more minds I figure that we can get together thinking about this, the better we might be, and maybe schools, education, so incentives.
So I appreciate those, but I want to kind of wind up what I heard because there's a common theme that runs through all forests. And so a lot of it is dealing with the small diameter, the merchantable lumber, the timber, and then we talked about the predictability issues. But one of the biggest key factors that I think you guys understand, and clearly the people in the private sector do, is nobody's going to make investment into innovation or transportation if they don't have a guaranteed supply. 2 or 3 years doesn't result in investments in all of these infrastructure or efficiency needs that we need. And so when it really comes down to if we're going to manage these things through your NEPA process, particularly the Forest Service are into that, you've got to come up with within the NEPA to analyze a 10-year timber supply and how you contract that out, because without that guarantee, and because we all know here, realistically, the pendulum's going to swing. And it always does. And unfortunately, the Forest Service probably suffers more from that pendulum than almost any other agency out there. But the secret to solving the problems, as I understand them, is we have got to have investment, innovation, predictability, and that only happens if we have predictability. And if we can't come out and say, look, we can, through that process, put up a 10-year or a 5-year guaranteed timber contract or something of that nature, then we're just all kidding ourselves. And particularly in the NEPA process that you're currently in, that needs to be part of the entire analysis, is how you would structure those. And it's a little dated, but at one time, you had the authority to do stewardship agreements, and it contemplated that authority to do that more landscape scale contracting, and then the stewardship contracts underneath that. We can't help you if we can't bring in industry that we guarantee that there's going to be a long-term investment on their return. And so that's the challenge for you and it's the challenge for us. But I think you've got a partner here. Let's make a little hay while the sun shines. So thank you. Appreciate your input. And it's a shared problem that we're trying to solve here, but that's the root of the problem that we've got to get to.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. I just want to throw in a quick comment on that as well. That's listening to all the discussion here. We've got the wind at our back, roadless rules kind of in motion. We got the executive order in March to streamline things. We got the one big beautiful bill to get some more forests that we can harvest. And the comment that you made, yeah, how do we make it profitable for industry? And I see Mr. Nyman back here. I don't know if there's any other actual private timber harvest people in here, but can you comment on some of those questions, Mr. Nyman? I'd like to hear your opinion.
I think from a standpoint of an innovation and new investments, if industry isn't at the forefront of that, I've seen too many companies that come in based off of grants. And if they don't have the ability to have a long-term viable process, we're kidding ourselves. So if you don't have industry and the innovative part of them involved in your process to find new solutions, it's not going to work with government by itself. You've got a good research lab in Madison that can help and create stuff, but it still takes industry to make those investments and make it work. From our perspective, I want to go back to one comment that Kelly made based on our meeting last spring, setting up that we have an emergency situation in the Black Hills. And from my perspective, we've cut our production over the last 6 years, 70%. We've laid off 200 and some people and probably close to 200 loggers and stuff. So we've been really hit, and we're just hoping we've identified under the emergency plan what it takes to get industry back going again. So I appreciate and I agree with you and the other comments that we need a 10-year plan. Sean referred to that. That's really important. But we have to be there to even look at a 10-year plan. We should be investing in our mills $1 to $2 million a year, and we haven't done that for a number of years because of what happened in the last administration and what was cut back. So that you start dying when that happens, and then when we start dying, then that community dies too with it. So it's really important that we look at our short-term emergency plan and look at that 10-year plan. We've identified what we need to keep industry healthy, and we just got to keep our focus there and not lose track of that if we want industry around. The comment on the loggers and the truckers is really important too, because they're a vital part to us to make sure we're healthy. But what we've seen in parts of Wyoming and Colorado, and we lost some up here, well, we cut back. When you lose 70% of your production, you lose 70% of your workforce. So we used to have 30-some logging crews, and now we're down, what, Paul, to 7 or 8?
We have 8 over.
8 now crews. So that's a huge impact that those either go out of business or leave. But there was a lot of good stuff that come out of IRA and the Bills Act, but one of the downsides to that was all that money to focus on the small wood and stuff was good. The idea was good, but they paid way more. So we lost contractors that went to do the thinning and stuff. The new administration is trying to direct that back to get that money directed back to saw logs, which is important to keep our industry, because that's one of their main directives in the president's letter and the chiefs. That was all directed. But we in Colorado, we lost a whole bunch of contractors that went to the Front Range, and when they came back, they had to have more money because they was getting paid under the stewardship stuff a whole lot more money. So there's other impacts that hurts the sawmills that are trying to survive. And when you enter a depression the last 2 years in housing, in repair and remodel. We had a couple really good years during the COVID, but now that we're giving that all back. So I don't know of any mills making money right today. I've heard there's 2 out west that are. Studs are coming back in some of the other market, but boards and shop has not come back. Ponderosa, being a repair and remodel industry, is really in tough shape right now. And it's a dog-eat-dog world out there in the market. Even with all the restrictions on the imports, you got the South that's increased their production by, I think the last numbers I heard, increased production 8 billion board feet over the last 6 or 7 years. So it's a dynamic situation here. So we do need to really look and get industry at the table to make the decisions, or they won't be around.
More comments? Anybody want to maybe make a comment? What do we do for longer term contracts? Is there anything in the pipeline, or how does that look to give more predictability? As Senator Hicks brought up, can you guys tell us what's going on with predictability?
Well, I know we've got the options to do 20-year contracts now. And I know there's a couple forests in Colorado, I believe, that are piloting 20-year contracts in our region, but I don't know what kind of CCF every year they're guaranteed or anything like that. I just know that they are out there, and they're starting to be used. We're just, because it's a new thing to us, so I'm assuming that in the next few years we'll see more of them as we figure out how to make them work, because it's not like a regular one and you've got to write it and create a whole new contract, which is, for a bureaucracy like the Forest Service, it takes a little time to get up and running. So I think that might be one avenue for stability. And then a commitment from us to continue working and being proactive and as efficient as possible, and utilizing people like this, like the state, for a Good Neighbor Authority, because it's helped us here on the Medbo and the route with the state of Colorado, and our Good Neighbor Authority work with them getting timber out of the woods. So it's been a real bonus. It's a real success. So.
Thanks, Don. I would just add, there's, in my mind, there's 2 factors there. There is having a predictable availability. So that's through your planning processes to get the shelf stock, the volume available to sell. And then what is the right contract tool? And so I think whether that's a longer term contract, whether it's the type of contract, a Good Neighbor sale, a traditional Forest Service timber sale, a stewardship sale, a state stewardship agreement or service agreement, whatever that right tool is. And we need to figure out what the right tool is through communication with industry. So one of the things we were trying to do on the Bighorn is share through, a spring meeting with industry partners. Here's all the volume we have cleared through NEPA. Here's what the footprint is. And where those acres are, how much volume is anticipated off those acres, and what is the right tool to offer those so that they're viable. And open to a conversation around whether that's a longer term contract. But of course, with a longer term, it's a contract. So there comes some risk there for the purchaser of having that wood on the landscape for a longer term. What if you get beetle epidemic or a large wildfire? There's a potential loss there. And so we want to balance that. So we can offer a longer term as long as it's what the industry partner wants, the right term for the right work. But I think getting to a place where we've got that predictable supply through the NEPA process available on the shelf that we can sell, or when winds shift and swings happen, we can move into a Good Neighbor agreement so Kelly can offer it at the right time for the right price.
And I'm just going to add one thing that did not get brought up that I'm shocked about with these forest soups when it comes to timber sales and what we need to really rethink when it comes to our timber sales, and that is road packages. We have to rethink putting roads and road work associated and putting it on the logging industry and the timber industry. We have to stop and change how we do that. And I think there's some piloting we can do in some of these pilot programs. I think Good Neighbor Authority can help with some of this, but industry is carrying the burden of fixing our National Forest Service roads. And it is practically crushing us in Wyoming by trying to do that. And so we have to start saying, we are going to prioritize getting this active management work done. And we're going to have to figure out what that cost to do that road work is going to look, not associated with the work that has to get done on the ground. So that is the other little nut we need to really work on cracking. And I think all of us, when we get together, we talk about that. And that's a little bit off of what Andrew's talking about, like what's the right tool for the right place, because we have done some of that in the Bighorns. We still need to continue to do that because of the amount of road work in some of these places that need to get done. And it does affect some of our forests pretty drastically when we're talking about being able to have a sale accessible and available to industry. Yeah.
Others, comments, questions?
I just want to.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Nyman?
Andrew kind of hit around a little bit in support of getting rid of the roadless in the Bighorns. I watched the company in Sheridan, the second that roadless hit the Bighorns, it wiped that company out. And about access-wise, from an industry perspective, you got about 14% of the Bighorns you can actually touch and treat. Doesn't mean it's the other 86% is all roadless. It's access along with the roadless area. Getting rid of that roadless in the state of Wyoming is so critical. It'll even help in the Black Hills a little bit, but that put a mill out of business, that one rule. And I seen it affect a whole bunch of others. The one in Laramie, it affected it some. So there's a lot of other mills. Wyoming, when I was a kid, had 11 mills. Colorado had 11. The Black Hills had 7. So we've seen a huge change in the industry going out of business. Economics, you really need to figure out, to make new investments, you have to go to 2 shifts. What happened during COVID and the cost increase in manufacturing cost really changed the dynamics. You have to have a bigger mill than what you used to years ago. So that's a big change.
Thank you, Mr. Nyman. I hear a lot of comments on NEPA. Is NEPA a big bottleneck? Is it even a constitutional policy act? And how do we streamline NEPA? Any comments on that? Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just, without the microphone. So the other side of NEPA, if you're going to opine on that, I would like you to also, how to use the CEs associated with that. And there's the current level of CEs, the categorically exclusions. How are you using that? And do we need to expand that? I mean, this is not only a discussion for the Wyoming legislature. We have pretty close conduit with our congressional delegation. FAR bill is going to be up this year. So is there a tool there that we need to look at in the context of NEPA, is also looking at those categorical exclusions? So
go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I'm also going to go back a little bit to the previous question about working with industry and providing that long-term solution. We've been working with industry, meeting with them several times a year in the Bridger Teton, as well as we have a couple collaboratives. So I think in order to speed up NEPA and make sure that we're doing the right NEPA, is have buy-in and support that what we're doing NEPA on is actually going to be sold. If we have to do roads, make sure that we do as much pre-work as possible. Or in our case, our road is too expensive. The Union Pass Road is too expensive to redo for logging equipment. So we're working with our neighbor so that we can use his roads to get the sale through his portion. And then we're working on fixing his roads when the logging company is going through. But NEPA really does have to start before NEPA starts. We have to make sure that we're working with our partners. The technical stuff, that's pretty easy as long as we have staff We've lost quite a few of our staff, and that's one of the reasons why we're working with the Department of Ag to have them through GNA, to have them contract out the NEPA for some of our range stuff. So again, if we can have that tool available and funding available to give to the state foresters, that would also help us with getting through the NEPA when we get through what we already have on the shelf.
Anybody else? No.
So, Black Hills NEPA, CE authorities, yeah, we've heavily been dependent on CEs on the Black Hills for decades, probably. I mean, I had one district, I asked them to prepare using the Emergency Determination Authority, write an EA process for a watershed, and they didn't know how to do it because they had done CEs their entire career on the Black Hills. So I am paying very close attention to Senator Westerman, you know, from Arkansas, looking at Save Our Forest Act, possibly going to a 10,000 acre level CE. That makes more sense to me than the current CE authorities that we have. And especially at watershed level planning, if we're looking at large planning areas, you know, 50, 60,000 acre plus planning areas, being able to use that authority, maybe 2 or 3 in a given watershed, that makes progress for us. The current CE authority is very restrictive, and we actually lost category 6 the other day, which we've used a few times on the Black Hills. You know, it allows you to take chunks out, but it doesn't really get you that capacity-wide flexibility that you need. We are fully implemented, and also, you know, that came through the secretarial order process, the emergency determination strategy on the forest. So all of our EAs are going through that process. And we actually, the Black Hills helped develop the portal system so that National Forest could use that process. So we're basically ahead of the game before Washington even figured out how to use the authority, which I take great pride in. You know, we look for those efficiencies. So, you know, other things, you know, if Kelly gets additional capacity, the state's helping with the NEPA process. I know that's something that we're looking as potential growth for us. Some states do that. Always welcome as part of the planning process. For, you know, the federal agencies still have to review that, but we're willing to work in tandem together in developing planning. So I think there's real opportunities to see quicker things, move through the system quicker. The other thing that I'm doing in the Black Hills, we do have a few endangered species specific to the forest. And what traditionally has happened, unless you have some form of programmatic agreement with U.S. Fish and Wildlife for the conservation of a species, it's a one-off consultation process for every project, and that's a 7A1 process. But there's another authority you can use with Fish and Wildlife Service. It's called 7A2 process that looks at conservation-wide strategies for a listed species. And so we have northern longyearbat listed on the Black Hills that currently we go through one-off consultations. We're using right now emergency consultation for all of those, and it's going pretty quick. It's about a 30-day process. But I want to move off of that because what happens is you get design criteria restrictions that can be independent based on the project that you're addressing. Through the 7A2 process, I can look at habitat across the Black Hills comprehensively. And if we develop a programmatic agreement that allows me to have a take for that species. And so it doesn't restrict me from implementing a timber project in one particular given area as long as I'm conserving the greater context of a species habitat across the entire forest. So that would add tremendous flexibility and possibly limit seasonal restrictions for timber harvest and all sorts of other things.
Thank you. What's that? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. BLM recently adopted 6 new CXs, a few from the Forest Service and a few from some state, I'm forgetting the other one, but we're implementing 2 of them, one this summer in Black's Fork near Evanston area. And we completed that relatively quickly this fall. And then Pinedale is currently writing one, so that will help expedite we're doing an East Rim, I think in coordination with the Forest Service and State Forestry as well. And then the Bureau-wide consultation that we have concerning white bark pine, we do not have to individually consult for any of the timber sales provided or fuels projects, provided that we follow conservation measures, which is just about documentation and that sort of thing. So we haven't gone through that process yet, but we are cleared to not have to consult for those reasons.
Thank you. All right, are you guys probably ready to wrap it up? I know everybody's traveled here today, and we surely appreciate that, your time and your patience in answering all of the questions. I really thank Ms. Norris here, the State Forester, for organizing this and getting it put on, and for the U.S. Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management for being here on the panel. So without any further ado, Kelly, if you want to wrap it up, or any other comments?
Sure thing, Chairman Ide. Just wanted to thank both our federal partners who are here today with Wyoming BLM and the U.S. Forest Service. I really do think we're making strides, positive strides in the right direction. Sometimes it feels like a tremendous, overwhelming amount of work, but we are moving in a better direction. So I really appreciate the partnerships that we have. And I really want to thank Wyoming Legislature for all of their support that they have given to state forestry over the years and continue to do. And look forward to more future meetings and tours with all of you in the future to continue this work together. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Thank
you.
Forest briefing. I like the conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.